Accidental death. Reborn as the young master of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect, the brother of Ning Rongrong. Who dares to say that auxiliary martial souls cannot fight? I have been living a low-key life all along, and it's not about you riding around your neck. Don't follow the group, don't worship the master. Keywords of the novel. Douluo. I am already very low-key without any pop-ups. Douluo. I am already very low-key. Download the entire TXT collection. Douluo. I am already very low-key. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. The Young Master of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1. The Young Master of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect. Time travel. However, there was no panic. At the moment when I opened my eyes and saw the world, there was more anticipation in my heart. My name is Ning Xiaotian, the second largest Seven Treasures Glass Sect Young Master in Douluo continent. There is a wealthy father and a lovely sister who, after coming into this world, only regret is to have their own mother. After giving birth to them, they passed away due to massive bleeding. The reason why he came to this world is that Ning Xiaotian's death in his previous life was indeed too bizarre. A man killed by the gods. Can anyone imagine it? On the Blue Star continent where they originally lived, there were also gods present, but most of the time they did not appear in the affairs of ordinary people. But there are always exceptions to everything. Ning Xiaotian was just walking on the road in his previous life. An old man in his 30s walked on the road with this Bingtangulu. Perhaps everything already had a premonition in advance. Before, every day was overcrowded, and the main road where cars came and went was unusually quiet today. Not to mention there were cars on the road, there were no people. But just when Ning Xiaotian was puzzled, a bamboo stick fell from the sky at some point, and it happened to hit Ning Xiaotian steadily and directly. It should be said to be inserted directly into his head. Inertia plus impact force. The originally ordinary bamboo stick can now be transformed into an ultimate killing weapon. Bang! With the sound of falling to the ground, there was not much blood on the ground. However, judging from the length of the bamboo stick before crossing the line, it is obvious that most of it has already entered his head. Ha! At the moment when Ning Xiaotian fell to the ground, a woman who looked quite exquisite in mid-air suddenly showed an incredulous expression. As for that bamboo stick, I guess we can also know exactly what it is. The woman held 5 or 6 strings of tomatoes on sticks in her other hand. Looking at the color on her mouth, it is not difficult to guess that the bamboo stick on Ning Xiaotian's head should be on tomatoes on sticks. It's over, it's over. The woman who was still suspended in mid-air just now had already arrived next to Ning Xiaotian in just the blink of an eye. However, this woman did not choose to help, but rather stood on the ground and chopped her feet back and forth in some anxiety. Even at this urgent time, the tomatoes on sticks in his hands are still stuffed into his mouth from time to time. At this moment, the quiet street just now suddenly became lively. And all of this looks like those people themselves are walking on the street. As for Ning Xiaotian, for this guy who suddenly fell to the ground and had a bamboo stick stuck above his head, there were already people watching the excitement surrounding him. As for the woman floating in mid-air, after falling down, ordinary people seemed to turn a blind eye to her, or rather not at all. After struggling for a long time, the woman finally chose to squat on the ground and eat tomatoes on sticks while thinking about things. 10 minutes later, the woman suddenly slapped her thigh and a lewd smile appeared on her face. In 10 minutes, the ambulance had already arrived, and after inspecting Ning Xiaotian, who had fallen to the ground, he shook his head helplessly. Accompanied by a white cloth covering it, Ning Xiaotian was carried away like this, but when his body was carried away, his soul remained in place and lay there. Perhaps imprisoned in the physical body and unable to move, but after becoming a soul body, Ning Xiaotian suddenly sat up directly. But at this moment, within his line of sight, except for the woman with a lewd smile, there was nothing left to see. It is still the empty street, still quiet and terrifying. Just as she stood up, the woman with a lewd smile suddenly rushed over and generously placed her arm on Ning Xiaotian's shoulder. For this man who has been single for over 30 years, at this moment, he felt his blood rush up his head. Faced with this situation, Ning Xiaotian could only nervously and awkwardly ask, "What's up with you? Whisper and be timid." The woman suddenly became even happier, and then she pretended to be calm and continued to hook her shoulders and say to Ning Xiaotian, "I am a god." Ha! Why show this expression? The woman who claimed to be a heavenly god asked. "Don't do this. We don't seem to know each other that well. And I feel like you're a woman. How did you speak?" The god woman picked up tomatoes on sticks and put them directly into her mouth. By the way, she released her arm around Ning Xiaotian. Walking to the side and sitting there leisurely, he slowly said, "I'm sorry you're already dead." What was said was so resounding and powerful, so indifferent. When this woman said these words, she was simply Ning Xiaotian was stunned for a moment. Seems like something came to mind in a daze. Immediately after, the corners of the person's mouth couldn't help but start twitching. Especially when I think of the bamboo stick suddenly stuck on my head, although there are many high-rise buildings in this place, there is no place for me to walk. Shouldn't you? Sorry, it was my mistake that accidentally killed you. I still sat there eating tomatoes on sticks as if nothing had happened. I spoke very fast and didn't mean to apologize at all. Ning Xiaotian himself wants to ask if the other party is also the soul of a dead person. That's great now. Did you kill me? You're still saying it's so easy and comfortable now. If you're really a god, I'll complain about you. What? The woman who claimed to be a heavenly god suddenly became nervous, and then quickly and humbly approached Ning Xiaotian. She bent down and looked at him with an accompanying smile, saying, "Can we not complain? Is it really possible to file a complaint?" Seeing this woman's appearance, Ning Xiaotian immediately began to feel proud in his heart. Although feeling proud in my heart, I still maintained a serious expression on my face. You ruined my life, can you still not allow me to complain? Anyway, you haven't had a good life either. You've reached this age and don't even have a girlfriend. The woman pouted, although her voice was not very loud, it could still be heard very clearly by Ning Xiaotian. Too much. Who said I don't have a girlfriend? And I can make it clear to you that I must file a complaint against you. Ning Xiaotian looked angrily at the woman who claimed to be a heavenly god and shouted. Don't. As long as you don't complain, then I can fulfill your wish. After all, if I am complained about once, I will be expelled from the ranks of the gods. I don't want to do this. With a look of grievance, the gods also began to show off and act coquettishly. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. People killed by heavenly gods. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. People killed by heavenly gods, then you resurrect me. No way, this is the main world. Reviving you will cause more chain reactions. I estimate that by then I will not be forced to resign, but will be sent to the heavenly god prison. That makes me a god too. Don't joke, how could I possibly have that ability? This can't be done, that can't be done. What can one of your wishes do? Ning Xiaotian looked at the woman silently and asked. Otherwise, although the main world cannot be resurrected, it does not mean that you cannot be reincarnated in the secondary world. This woman, who claimed to be a heavenly god, once again revealed her lewd smile and stared closely at the man in front of her, saying as she looked at him. Sub-world. Ning Xiaotian asked in confusion. That's right, it's a sub-world. The woman casually waved as she spoke, and a huge screen suddenly appeared in front of Ning Xiaotian. There are grids appearing on top, and each grid also records the name of that world. I took a rough look, and by the time I saw the words I was familiar with, it really made his three senses almost vomit out. Let me tell you. You're not here to be funny, are you? What else is there on this? Is it an anime? When will it become a world? Ning Xiaotian asked in silence. So he's the sub-world. Besides, why are you so excited? The woman asked. I don't want to go, I want you to resurrect me, otherwise I will complain about you. You bastard. Why did you come back to this topic again? The woman pinched her waist with both hands and angrily looked at Ning Xiaotian, who was a bit stubborn, roaring loudly. But then the voice softened again and said, so, as long as you don't complain and are willing to choose these sub-worlds, I can fulfill your 2 wishes. How about that? Blink, revealing a coquettish appearance. Ning Xiaotian suddenly extended a hand. Just when the other party was unsure, Ning Xiaotian opened his mouth and said, 5 wishes. What? This woman is really a bit unbelievable. She widened her eyes and was about to refuse, but Ning Xiaotian said again, if it doesn't work, forget it. I think it's better for me to complain about you. I agreed. The woman gritted her teeth, clenched her fist, and looked disgusted, but due to her identity as the next deity, she ultimately reluctantly agreed. Taking a deep breath, the woman pointed to the world on the big screen and asked, tell me, which world do you want to go to? This. Ning Xiaotian pointed to the position on the screen, which was prominently displayed as Douluo world. He is not very clear about the other worlds, most of which he has never heard of. There are some that he has read a lot in anime and books, but it just makes people feel a bit scared. Faced with the world that he had already confirmed his intention to turn around, the celestial being suddenly asked with a lazy expression, speak up, speak your wishes, and then you can honestly get out of here. How did you speak? Believe it or not, I won't go, I'll complain to you. Little brother. You have already chosen the world, what is your wish? The woman suddenly started acting coquettish again, and this artificial appearance really made Ning Xiaotian feel that her goosebumps had fallen off. I want to become the richest member of the Douluo family. No problem. I want the abilities of the pirate world. This doesn't work. You can be precise to a certain number, and I can only do targeted ones. I want the tricolor dominance and Navy 6 style body art. Sure. I want the reincarnation eye of the Hokage world. Sure, but the level of cultivation you can reach depends on yourself. I want a system. Isn't it something that all the travelers have? Is your brain what? Where did you get that system? Can you just feel like it's not like reading 2 novels? It's better to file a complaint. Ning Xiaotian looked indifferent, turned his head, whistled, and didn't care about the expression of this so-called god. After struggling for a moment, the woman stomped her feet helplessly, but under pressure, she still said, no problem. There's one last one, hurry up. I need to have all the animal and plant information of Douluo world in my memory, as well as. Damn it. Don't go too far. If you say that, I might as well send you directly to God's position. That's also possible. The god of Douluo's world, although it's a sub-world, is it just one position lower than me. With that ability, it's better to directly fulfill your wish to become a god. This woman couldn't withstand the bastard's wish in front of her in the end. What does this mean by a wish? Isn't it taking her own life? Being able to understand so much is almost leaving the world's resources to him, and it also requires connecting the world's will, which is definitely an impossible wish to achieve. However, in the end, the woman still wanted to quickly resolve the matter, and finally said, the heavenly God allows you to bring your phone over, but it only has a total of 12 hours of usage time. After the time is up, the phone will automatically disappear. That's quite good too. After weighing the pros and cons, Ning Xiaotian realized that this was indeed the biggest concession made by this so-called heavenly god. After all, there was already a system in place, so he casually said, okay. Sure, just press a fingerprint on this. The woman suddenly waved her hand again and a piece of paper appeared in front of Ning Xiaotian. The content above is actually very simple, it means one's own death, it has nothing to do with this woman. Anyway, they are already dead, so what should be indifferent doesn't matter anymore. However, while pressing the fingerprint, Ning Xiaotian still asked, "You said I went over. What if I kill the protagonist of that world?" Impossible. That is the call of the will of the world. If you kill him before achieving the goal that the world will want him to achieve, you will also be erased by the world will. That's it. Just as Ning Xiaotian was still hesitating, the woman suddenly picked up his hand and pressed it down. Later, he kicked Ning Xiaotian directly into the stomach, and at the same time, a black vortex appeared behind the opponent. Ning Xiaotian was kicked into the vortex before he could react. Long-winded. The woman clapped her hands and then said contentedly, "Get it done." After saying that, I continued to pick up my tomatoes on sticks and fly into the air, enjoying the scenery while eating. After finishing, he still looked like a bird and casually threw out the bamboo stick in his hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Ning Xiaotian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Ning Xiaotian. So, in this way, Ning Xiaotian became the richest young master of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect in the world. After arriving in this world, my memories of my past life have not disappeared. Since birth, he can speak at half a year old and walk normally at 8 months, so he is also regarded as the most talented and demonic person in the Seven Treasures and Glass Sect. Life is indeed quite comfortable now. Looking back on myself, I used to work like a dog every day for money. But now, everything is living such a relaxed and comfortable life. Lying on the rocking chair every day, flipping through the collection of books in this sect, there are at least 10 books placed next to my rocking chair every day. And Ning Xiaotian's biggest job every day is to look at these things. As for what the heavenly God promised to him, although it has been realized so far, this horse treader is not something that people in this world can cultivate at all. The Navy Type 6 and its dominance in the world of pirates, if you want to use it in this world, it's like you insist on welding 2 pieces of wood with electric welding. It's simply an impossible thing. Now everything can only hope for that so-called system, but even so, this thing has not appeared since I was born. Even if you feel like you've been tricked, it can still be considered a helpless thing. In the blink of an eye another 3 years have passed. Brother, why are you still reading here? Hurry up and prepare. Dad has sent us to the front hall to start awakening our martial souls. In the courtyard, Ning Xiaotian remained in his original state, lying on the polished and shiny lounge chair, reading his book. 6-year-old Ning Xiaotian, although still with a youthful appearance on his face, does indeed look quite energetic. A head of short hair, set off against his cute cheeks, and dressed in all black, highlighting maturity different from his age group. 6-year-old Ning Xiaotian rarely leaves this yard, and his daily tasks are to exercise, read books. Besides, it seems like there are no hobbies or interests. As the leader of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect, Ning Ziyuan, their father, could only reluctantly agree to this. However, compared to Ning Xiaotian, the younger sister who came to find him, who is also the protagonist of Douluo, Ning Rongrong, has a completely different personality. Being carefree, she will not stay in any place for more than 2 hours. As a princess of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect, she has been spoiled since childhood and is even more reckless in her actions. Looking at this younger sister who didn't even want to knock on the door, Ning Xiaotian just gently put down the book and then looked up slightly. What are you doing here? What do you mean to come here and do? Dad asked me to call you, and we'll start the martial soul awakening ceremony in half an hour. Oh. I got it. Brother, don't you expect the awakening of martial souls? Ning Rongrong asked with an excited expression on his face. Don't expect it. I really admire you. What's the point of reading every day? Walking to Ning Xiaotian's side, Ning Rongrong casually snatched the book that was placed in Ning Xiaotian's hand. Taking a glance at the content above, these words were simply the main stimuli to her brain and nerves. Just a glance made her feel uncomfortable all over. What a boring thing. That's just targeting you. Listening to what Ning Rongrong said, Ning Xiaotian stood up bored. After casually grabbing the book that was stolen by the other party, gently placed the book box on the nearby countertop. Young master and miss, the master asked me to call you too. The martial soul awakening ceremony is about to begin. Please hurry to the front hall. As soon as I put down my book, the sound from the door had already arrived. They didn't come in, and most importantly, Ning Xiaotian didn't like anyone to enter this courtyard. Even for regular cleaning, he is the only one who does it alone, and many servants may not understand his independent personality. Got it. With a calm response, Ning Xiaotian looked at Ning Rongrong and said, "Let's go. Brother, why don't I move over and live with you later? What do you think?" "Not much. Why are you so stingy? You're my brother, living with you. Why don't you agree? There is no shortage of space in my home. I like quietness and don't like anyone disturbing my quiet life. I feel like you're like an old man in his 70s and 80s. The two of them walked and chatted, nodding and bowing to each of the servants passing by. Of course, for this kind of half-aged child, the conversation along the way is actually all about some messy things. However, at the same time, they had already arrived at the place where they were coming before they knew it. The main hall of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect has gathered at least a dozen people of the same age at this moment. Their goal is all the same, which is to do martial soul awakening here. Dad. As soon as I entered, I saw Ning Fengji sitting at the top. Ning Xiaotian and Ning Rongrong immediately shouted out. The difference is that one is very polite, but the other runs over lively. Ning Fengji nodded slightly, ignoring Ning Rongrong and instead looking at his own son. Although my son has been staying in the sect all along, it seems that I, as an old father, haven't seen him for over a week. Normally, Ning Xiaotian is not willing to leave the yard, but as the head of a sect, if he wants to see his son, he has to run to his place to see him. This is just him. Most people in the sect may not have seen this young master before, so taking advantage of this opportunity, these people can more or less get to know the sect young master who is called a genius. Xiaotian, it's really rare to see you once. An old man sitting below Ning Fengji, who appeared to be around 60 years old, stared at Ning Xiaotian with a smile on his face and said. Grandpa Bone, long time no see, your spirit and spirit have improved. Haha. Is that right? Upon hearing Ning Xiaotian's words, Gu Rong burst into laughter. Xiaotian, what do you think of your sword, Grandpa? The other old man next to Gu Rong immediately asked. These two are the only two Douluo titles in the Seven Treasures Glass Sect, so facing Chen Xian's question, Ning Xiaotian lowered his head slightly and respectfully shouted, Have you seen Grandpa's sword? You little one, I don't know who you learned so much politeness from, just like your father. Kendo Qinshin opened his mouth with great helplessness and said. Every time I come into contact with this little guy, it seems like I'm no different from Ning Fengji. Thank you for Grandpa Jian's praise. If Xiaotian could have half as much as his father, then he would be satisfied enough in the future. Alright, I'm still hoping that you can surpass me in the future. If you can only reach half of me, that's not what I want. Ning Xiaotian's words instantly stimulated Ning Fengji sitting on top. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Insert a team. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Insert a team. I was originally hoping that you could be more impressive, but now I don't know whose face you're talking about. Ning Fengji finished speaking, then slowly stood up and elegantly walked down from above. Following closely, both Chen Xian and Gu Rong stood up, knowing that time had come. Are you all ready for today's awakening ceremony? As soon as Ning Fengji arrived, He began to open his mouth and ask the dozen or so children in rows. These children clearly looked a bit nervous, but the one standing at the front still said, "Ready." The awakening ceremony today is presided over by Douluo Qinshin, so next, you all need to be prepared, show your best side, feel everything with your heart, and follow the guidance to make your final awakening. Ning Fengji spoke and raised his hand to point to a crystal ball placed in the center not far away. The crystal ball is placed on a shelf, with a pure white and transparent color, while also tinged with a bit of mystery. Little ones, let me explain the awakening ceremony to you one by one. Place your hands on the crystal ball, feel the inside of the crystal ball with your heart, and then the crystal ball will guide you to see your awakened martial soul. After the awakening of the martial soul, place your hand on the crystal ball again and start releasing your awakened soul power towards the crystal ball, in order to evaluate how much innate soul power you have. Douluo Qinshin walked to the front and said to the dozen or so children in a straight line. "Xiaotian, how are you preparing here?" Ning Fengji turned his head and looked at his son standing next to him. In the end, he couldn't help but open his mouth and ask a question. "Look." In a simple sentence, I instantly made my father speechless. No matter how simple things are, I don't want to communicate with them on a regular basis. If it weren't for his own son being too smart, they would all be feeling like Ning Xiaotian is a fool. Ning Feng shook his head in silence. Helpless at the same time, one can only look forward to their son's future performance. After all, for soul masters, the age of 6 is just the beginning. As the first child in front walked out and stood next to the crystal ball, he took a deep breath with a serious expression on his face. Then he lifted his slightly trembling right hand and gently placed it on top of the crystal ball. After slowly exhaling, he took another deep breath and then gently closed his eyes. The scene was very quiet, and no one disturbed the person who was in the process of awakening their martial soul. In less than a moment, accompanied by a faint light emanating from the crystal ball, the first awakened little one immediately opened his eyes and wore an excited expression on his face. "I am awakened. Come, let me see what you awakened to." Watching the excited little guy, Douluo Qinshin asked with a smile on his face. As the words fell, the little one lifted his right hand and instantly released his martial soul. A delicate dagger. "What's your name, little one?" Chen Xian asked. "Report to Elder Qi, my name is Li Ran." "Can you tell me your martial soul name?" "Wolf Fong Dagger." "Very good little guy, hurry up. Test your soul power." Qinshin is also quite interested in this type of martial soul. Under the form of a dagger, the future path of the martial soul is almost always related to sudden spikes. As a quick attacking soul master, as long as the soul power can keep up, there will definitely be a bright path of its own in the future. After watching this little guy named Li Ran put his hand on the crystal ball again, everyone's hearts began to tense up. Ning Xiaotian is different from others and looks at everything calmly. Then he waved his hand towards the servant standing on his left side, without shouting, but gestured towards his buttocks. The meaning is very obvious, that is to bring me a chair. The other party also understood their eldest son's thoughts in an instant, so they gently lifted a chair and slowly began walking towards Ning Xiaotian. In this process, I am afraid of causing any disturbance, which may lead to people's awakening and problems. Once this happens, there will inevitably be a scolding. Ning Fengji certainly saw his son's movements, but he didn't say much. In such a place, I didn't expect that as an old man, I was still standing, and he actually wanted to sit there. But it doesn't matter anymore. Because at this time, Li Ran, who was the first to conduct a martial soul awakening and soul power test, had already demonstrated his soul power test. Looking at the blue light emanating from the crystal ball, Qinshin shouted loudly, "Li Ran, martial soul wolf Fong Dagger, innate soul power level 4. This result is already considered a very good one. In the future, at least on the path of cultivation, reaching the Soul King should not be a big problem. The soul power of martial souls is divided into a total of 100 levels, with each 10 levels being a stage, namely Soul Master, Great Soul Master, Soul Zun, Soul Sect, Soul King, Soul Emperor, Soul Saint, Soul Douluo, and Title Douluo. Many people who can cultivate to the level of Soul Sect throughout their lives are already considered good. After all, in the vast Douluo continent, there are only a few high-level Soul Masters compared to a relatively large crowd. Ning Xiaotian leaned back on the chair, staring thoughtfully at the situation ahead. The first one had already gone down, and the second one had walked up. However, his thoughts had already run to other places in his mind. Hua Qingfeng, Martial Soul Ghost Dog, Innate Soul Power Level 6. When Qinxin shouted these words, everyone in the entire hall looked sideways. Even Ning Fengji nodded in agreement. This can already be considered a remarkable existence, with innate soul power of level 6, coupled with this special beast martial soul, future achievements on this continent cannot be underestimated. Can I join a team? Just as Hua Qingfeng finished, Ning Xiaotian suddenly stood up and asked Chen Xian, who was hosting this awakening of martial souls. Sitting here is too boring, at least this is how it is for him. Speaking, Ning Xiaotian walked up directly, smiled, and politely asked the other child who was preparing to go up, I have other things to do, can I join the team? The young master laughed, there's no problem at all. The children behind them also quickly waved their hands one by one. Where is this? Can you say something about their territory? Xiaotian, what are you doing? Isn't it good to just queue up honestly? Ning Fengji looked at him with a slight dissatisfaction and asked. I'm tired and need to go back to rest, so it's better to finish quickly. Ning Xiaotian replied directly without even looking back, his gaze fixed on the crystal ball, completely disregarding whether others agreed, and he walked up directly. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. I awakened an abandoned martial soul. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. I awakened an abandoned martial soul. Seeing that everything was already like this, Ning Fengji felt more nervous in his heart. Perhaps he was a little angry just now, but compared to this matter, what is anger worth? Dad, do you think my brother will awaken the Seven Treasures Glass Pagoda? Ning Rongrong, who had been standing there watching others awaken, also nervously asked when he saw his brother go up. However, Ning Fengji quickly made a hissing gesture and stared intently at his son's situation. Place your right hand on top and carefully feel the crystal ball, while also feeling the changes in your body. In no time, a glimmer of light flashed by. Ning Xiaotian opened his eyes and let go of his hand, but it was not as pleasant as he had imagined. The expression on his face felt as if he had eaten feces, and the sighs were one after another. Xiaotian, what have you awakened? Qinxin asked with some excitement. Don't say it's him, the others, including the children, are all looking forward to it. Ning Fengji didn't dare to speak, but his furrowed brow had already proven the nervousness in his heart at the moment. Yeah, what did brother awaken? Ning Rongrong also ran up and quickly asked. After all, the awakening of martial souls is basically inherited from one's own parents, which does not necessarily mean that this is the case. In special circumstances, some unexpected situations may also occur. I awakened a useless martial soul. Ning Xiaotian sighed and said. As soon as these words were spoken, most people's hearts were instantly pounded. Especially Ning Fengji, for a moment, she clenched her fists tightly and her body couldn't stop trembling. Qinxin turned around to take a look, but still couldn't give up and said, Xiaotian, you may not know what a useless martial soul is. It's better to release it quickly and let Grandpa Jian take a look. Nodding, Ning Xiaotian reluctantly extended his right hand. At the same time, others were watching sideways, and even the majority of people had already reached their throats. As the martial soul was released, Ning Fengji saw this scene and instantly roared angrily, shouting, Ning Xiaotian. You told me this is a useless soul. The tense nerves that had just been tense were instantly released, which caused him to lose control of his emotions even when Ning Fengji had a huge gap. The Seven Treasures Glass Pagoda. Chen Xian suddenly spat out a mouthful of old blood. Do you call this the abandoned martial soul? The others were even more speechless, as they were the ones who sold well even after getting a discount. However, when Ning Xiaotian activated his martial soul, there were other gains. Closing my eyes, another image instantly appeared in my mind. He didn't show too much excitement because this thing was what he had been waiting for 6 years. System. Maybe not really. From beginning to end, it's just a panel. It's still the kind in black and white. The above is just a simple display, and it can hardly be any simpler. Initial allocation value of 100 assign attributes. Soul power level. 1 plus total level 100 writing will I level. 1 plus total level 100 overlord color and domineering aura. 1 plus total level 100 seen and heard colorful dominance. 1 plus total level 100 armed color dominance. 1 plus total level 106 body techniques. Finger gun. 1 plus total level 100 iron block. 1 plus total grade 100 Lanjiao. 1 plus total level 100 monthly steps. 1 plus total level 100 shaving. 1 plus total level 100 paper drawing. 1 plus total level 100. Apart from these contents, the rest is a place similar to a charging grid, staying on the right side of the assigned value. Although I don't understand what it means, the general idea is already clear. So just now, facing the surprise of those people, Ning Xiaotian didn't take it to heart, let alone see it. A martial soul that cannot be attacked, what is a useless martial soul? Ning Xiaotian muttered calmly, but who is the person present? Except for those children who didn't hear very clearly, which one else didn't listen very clearly. The speechless expression once again went straight up to Ning Fengji. If it weren't for this kind of occasion, he would really want to have a good conversation with his son. Xiaotian, don't worry about any martial souls for now, test your soul power. Qinshin asked in silence. However, at this moment, Ning Xiaotian's heart is completely immersed in the system panel in his mind. Although there is not much high-tech feeling, at least it can be considered better than nothing. It has to be said that the things that the so-called divine woman gave herself before were really good. This means that as long as you are willing, click on all 100 points of the initial allocation value to the soul power, and then you can instantly become a god. But in that case, what's the point of coming into this world on your own? Having been single for over 30 years in her past life, it's rare to have such good family conditions now. I have to hurry and marry a few of her wives. Not to mention anything else, at least the few girls in my impression are also quite good. Only by pulling a few back can one justify their own ideas. Xiaotian. Qinshin stood there shouting several times, and Ning Xiaotian, immersed in inner joy, finally regained his senses. What's wrong, Grandpa Sword? What's going on? What are you thinking? Hurry up and test your soul power. Good Ning Xiaotian took a deep breath and once again placed his hand on the crystal ball. Closing his eyes, he once again focused on the system panel in his mind, looking at the initial allocation value at the top. He knew one thing very well. No matter what, strength is the most important thing. Even if one is the young master of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect, if their entire innate soul power is at level 1, they are likely to become the abandoned one in the future. With the thought spinning, Ning Xiaotian began to light up directly after the addition of soul power. Finally, it stopped at the number 20, and then it was considered a stop. Anyway, he knows one thing clearly. Don't let his excellence surpass everyone in this world, and of course, don't let himself be too mediocre. The innate soul power is at level 20, and this result is likely to completely shock a whole room of people. Can they go out first? Ning Xiaotian suddenly opened his eyes and calmly said to Qinshin. Qinshin couldn't be the master on his side, although he didn't understand what it meant, he still turned his head to look at Ning Fengji standing not far away. The other party was frowning at the moment, and he naturally heard Ning Xiaotian's words. He took 2 steps forward and asked, "What do you want to do?" "Don't do anything." Ning Xiaotian answered straightforwardly. Without any explanation, I looked at my father with my eyes fixed on him. Of course, if he didn't agree, I really had no choice. After a moment of pause, Ning Fengji suddenly waved his hand with a serious expression and said, "Except for the eldest and second elders, everyone has left." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Innate Level 20 Soul Power. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Innate Level 20 Soul Power. Although those people were somewhat unclear, after the orders of the sect leader were issued, they began to leave towards the outside without any complaints. "Dad, I don't want to go out." Ning Rongrong immediately ran to Ning Fengji's side, holding his father's hand, and said to Ning Fengji with a coquettish expression. "This. Sure. But you're not allowed to tell anyone about the next thing." Before Ning Fengji could agree, Ning Xiaotian agreed directly and said. When everyone left, the doors of the rooms in the main hall were closed, and the entire hall instantly returned to its ultimate state of silence. Ning Fengji couldn't figure out what his son was up to. I am both puzzled and curious. He is not the only curious person. Gu Rong and Chen Xian are both big-eyed and small-eyed. After quiet, Ning Xiaotian once again raised his right hand and placed it on the crystal ball. Immediately, with the injection of his soul power, the crystal ball burst into a powerful blue light. The strong light even instantly lit up the already dimly lit main hall. Surprise. Unbelievable. This is the expression of everyone's emotions. Ning Rongrong may not understand what this is, but Ning Fengji, the old man, can no longer stand it. Staring in the direction of his son's side with wide eyes, completely unable to pay attention to the dazzling light of the crystal ball. Qinshin, the 2 old guys Gu Rong were also shocked in the same place. Innate Soul Power Level 20. Ning Fengji murmured in her mouth. I thought that my son should be excellent, but how could I never imagine that he could still be so outstanding? A Level 20 Innate Soul Power. The old man Gu Rong widened his eyes in disbelief and mechanically raised his hand to pat Chen Xian's shoulder. Have you ever heard of this situation? There seems to be one in the Martial Soul Hall. But that has always been a legend, and I don't know if it's true. Qinshin swallowed her saliva. The surprise of a few people had not yet passed, but Ning Xiaotian raised his hand and put away the dazzling light. I'm leaving now. Please don't harass me if you have nothing to do. Speaking, Ning Xiaotian, who was only 6 years old, lifted his foot and began preparing to leave. But at this moment, Ning Fengji, the first person to react from surprise, quickly shouted, Wait. What's wrong? Xiaotian, you. No need to say more, I know what you mean. If possible, I hope Grandpa Jian can accompany me for the next 2 years. You should rest assured about this, right? Ning Xiaotian said calmly. However, in the end, he politely turned around and bowed respectfully to a few people before lifting his small steps and leaving. Fengji, it's amazing. Chen Xian excitedly grinned and looked at Ning Fengji, saying. Congratulations to Fengji for having a good son this time. Gu Rong followed closely. Putting this statement aside, Ning Fengji may still try to compromise. But not this time. The smile at the corner of his mouth had even reached his ears, and the gentlemanly demeanor had always wanted him to suppress this joy, but it seemed uncontrollable. Sword uncle, bone uncle, this is not only for my Ning Fengji, but also a great good thing for our sect. So this can be considered as a joyful experience. Ning Fengji was already very excited, and the smile on his face was even more undisguised. Dad, my brother's soul power has an innate level 20. Ning Rongrong finally emerged from that surprise, with an incredible expression on his small face. Others have already reacted, but she is still frozen in place. Rongrong, you are not allowed to tell anyone about what you saw today. Even the people around you are not allowed. Just now, Ning Fengji, who was still excited, suddenly became serious and said seriously to Ning Rongrong. At first, he didn't understand why his son wanted everyone to leave, only focused on excitement and happiness. It was then that Ning Fengji realized that if this matter were to be revealed to the Martial Soul Hall or those with ulterior motives, it would pose great danger to his son. He will never allow such a thing to happen, let alone let others know. Fengji, Xiaotian's future studies can only be completed within our middle gate. Coincidentally, that little guy doesn't want to go out on a regular basis, so it's much easier to cover up. Qinxin also realized that the happiness just now had gradually transformed into a serious expression. Ning Rongrong may not understand, but it can also be seen from the expressions on these faces that he cannot reveal anything about his brother. Leaving the front hall, Ning Xiaotian returned to the exquisite courtyard alone once again. As for the matter in the front hall, he doesn't care at all, let alone what he can care about at his age. Returning to the courtyard, Ning Xiaotian immediately lay on his rocking chair. Close your eyes and start looking at the system panel in your mind as soon as possible. Although it's not very attractive, this thing is really quite useful. There is still an allocation value of 80 points. If all of them are added to the soul power level, there is no doubt that one can instantly become a title Douluo, but is this useless? Without combat experience, even if one becomes a title Douluo, they probably cannot escape the fate of being wiped out. How should we allocate 80 points? Ning Xiaotian looked at the system panel in front of him, feeling a little hesitant. It's not hesitating about which one to allocate to, but hesitating about how to evenly distribute. As for soul power, it is definitely not necessary. After all, if one's soul power continues to increase in this situation, it will more or less arouse suspicion from others. The current level 20 soul power is sufficient for his age. As for other aspects, as the plus sign is clicked, the assigned value of 80 points above begins to rapidly decrease. This thing undoubtedly needs to be prioritized on the writing will I. The allocation value of 30 points is almost entirely placed on this without any hesitation. After clicking on it, Ning Xiaotian withdrew from the mental space and could clearly feel the changes in his eyes. Everything in front of him seemed to become particularly slow in his field of vision, and there were no blind spots within his field of vision. Looking down, the flow of soul power within the body can be clearly observed. Stand up and walk to a mirror outside the room, watching the changes in oneself now. A pair of 3 jade writing wheel eyes were prominently displayed between the 2 eyes. The first time I came into contact with this thing, I have to say that when I saw it, I felt a bit uncomfortable. Too eerie. Even if it's one's own, it probably takes time to adapt. However, I am still very happy that at least this thing can become my strongest life-saving trump card. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Ning Rongrong Showoff. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Ning Rongrong Showoff. The remaining 50 points were allocated, and ultimately fell to the tricolor dominance, with 10 points allocated to each. The 6 forms ability was allocated to the iron block and shaving. The domineering color can release powerful pressure, and once familiar, it can be targeted and released. Armed and domineering, it can directly enhance physical strength and surpass the original limits of the body. Seeing, hearing, and being domineering can make oneself perceive danger, and even help oneself avoid danger. Although each item has only been assigned 10 points, the beginner level application is still relatively easy to master. As for the iron blocks and shaves in the 6 styles, one function is for body defense, and the other function is related to speed. Anyway, with just a 10-point allocation value, the power of the iron block is enough to ensure that people under the Soul Master do not cause any damage to themselves. Shaving can also allow oneself to move quickly within a distance of 10 meters. The reason for choosing these options is simply to ensure that you can quickly retreat when you are not an opponent. If your strength is weak, then it's important to save your life. However, living in this family, it seems that there is no need to worry about such things. Anyway, according to the talent displayed today, the Seven Treasures Glass Sect cannot let themselves be harmed no matter what. The main reason why Ning Xiaotian has shown such excellence is that he can receive strong protection by obtaining large resources. Brother. Do you know? My innate soul power has 9 levels. In the quiet courtyard, once again came a girl who made the courtyard no longer quiet. Ning Rongrong is still the same as before, never thinking about knocking on the door, let alone any etiquette or other things. She always just pushed open the door and ran in if she wanted to come in. Every time she comes in, this place always starts to become lively. How impressive. Really? I think so too. Even my dad praised me. Then we need to work hard. Can you stop being so perfunctory? Ning Rongrong listened to his brother's tone and pouted a bit angrily. However, he then leaned in front of Ning Xiaotian and excitedly said, "But brother, you are born at level 20. You are really amazing. Are you here for anything else? If not." I know. But, brother, can you stop reading books all day? There's nothing interesting in these books, right? Ning Rongrong asked curiously. Later, he moved a small stool from another corner of the courtyard and sat honestly next to Ning Xiaotian's rocking chair. Sitting there holding his head in both hands, he even looked thoughtful. You little girl's sudden honesty is really a bit uncomfortable. What? I just suddenly felt like I should have grown up. Dad said that after awakening my martial soul, many things can't be done as casually as before. I don't even bother, what are you worried about? Hurry up and cultivate, reach level 10 as soon as possible, so that Grandpa's sword can take the 2 of us to search for soul rings. So, little girl, this is not the time for you to sigh. Ning Xiaotian showed a kind smile and comforted his younger sister. Seeing the expression on the other person's face that he had to show again, Ning Xiaotian added fuel and vinegar and said, "Hurry up and go back to practice. It will be easy to advance at the beginning, try to complete it within a week. Don't worry, brother." Ning Rongrong stood up, with a determined expression on her face that she probably never experienced before. Bang! As the gate of the courtyard was heavily closed by the little girl, Ning Xiaotian sighed helplessly and finally kicked her out. Then, walking up to the door, he casually locked the door from inside. I really don't want to see that girl running over, maybe I will discover my other secrets. Since the martial soul has awakened, and the system panel has also appeared. Reading. It's completely unnecessary now. After all, he has almost read all the books of the Seven Treasures and Glass Sect in the past few years. Continuing to read is not very interesting, as for the rest the next day. Walking within the sect. The appearance of Ning Xiaotian has surprised many people. After all, it's normal not to see him leave the courtyard for 3 to 5 months, which is simply a normal thing. Many people who live here and are responsible for taking care of them have not seen them for almost half a year at most, which is not without it. Inside the main hall of the sect. Ning Xiaotian walked in and looked around, only to see Chen Xian sitting there. He walked up and respectfully shouted, "Grandpa Sword." "Ha! Xiaotian, why did you have time to come over today? Did Grandpa Jian take you to hunt for martial souls?" Qinshin was surprised by the appearance of the other party, but the matter of hunting martial souls had already been agreed upon in advance, which was to wait for Ning Rongrong to be promoted to level 10 before going together. "No, Grandpa Jian, I don't want to go so early for now, but isn't my father here? Feng Ji has gone to the palace. It seems that the Snow Knight Emperor has something to ask him for today." Qinshin smiled and said, but when she saw what was in Ning Xiaotian's hand, "Xiaotian, Grandpa Jian can also help you with some things. That's right. Ning Xiaotian nodded and said, I wonder if Grandpa Jian can ask the Power Clan to help me craft these things. Oh. Qinshin was puzzled for a moment, then looked at the roll of paper handed over by Ning Xiaotian and reached out to take it directly. When he opened this huge piece of paper, the strange things on it filled his sword Douluo with curiosity. Xiaotian, what are all these things on top of this? This is something I designed for myself to exercise my body. The top one is a dumbbell, the back one is a barbell, and the last one is a straight knife. But what are you doing to make something so heavy? Qinshin asked in confusion once again. After all, within his field of vision, the design drawings on paper were 50 pounds, 200 pounds, 500 pounds, and even the final 1,000 pounds. The key is that this thing is something they can play with. What's the use of him for such a heavy thing? Don't worry, Grandpa Sword. Xiaotian will have his own use then. No problem, since you don't want to say more, Grandpa Jian won't ask any more questions. I'll arrange for someone to notify the Power Clan and have them deliver this thing as soon as possible. Thank you, Grandpa Jian. Ning Xiaotian lowered his head and saluted, saying. 1 week later. It is indeed the same as I guessed before. Ning Rongrong, this little girl, easily reached level 10, after all, her previous soul power was definitely above level 9, which is why she was able to reach this level in such a short time. After reaching level 10, the only thing I need to do now is go to the soul hunting forest and find my own soul ring. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Hunting Martial Souls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Hunting Martial Souls. This trip was led by Sword Douluo, who also began to help the two find suitable martial souls. Two people directly utilized the third soul skill of Sword Douluo and once sat on the huge sword. Along the way, Ning Xiaotian has been lamenting the ability of Sword Douluo Qinshin to fly with his sword, giving him the feeling of being in the world of cultivation. Powerful abilities and speed are unmatched by oneself today. This is the strength of the strong. Destination, Starry Forest. This place is about 1,500 miles away from the Seven Treasures Glass Sect. Even if Sword Douluo can fly with his sword, he cannot reach such a far place in one go. 3 days later. A group of 3 people finally arrived at the outskirts of the Star Forest. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how good your background are, when you come to this place, you can only follow the rules here. The outskirts of the Starry Forest are like an amusement park now. A huge gate was prominently placed there, which didn't seem very desolate, or rather, a group of soul masters had already gathered on the outskirts of the Star Forest. They are now settling here and usually participate in team hunting missions to earn some bonuses. This is their way of life. As for the huge gate, it seemed like someone was holding hands at all times. Although it didn't seem very strict, almost everyone who entered had to follow their rules. Sword Douluo Crown, I don't know if you personally came over and haven't welcomed me far away. Please forgive me. As soon as the 3 of them walked up to the gate, the person in charge of guarding the Martial Soul Hall here immediately bowed respectfully and said. It's okay. Qinshin waved her hand and said, this time, I'm bringing the younger generation in our sect to hunt for soul rings. I see. The guy in charge of guarding here glanced up slightly at Ning Xiaotian and Ning Rongrong. Being able to have Sword Douluo Qinshin personally accompany them in hunting soul rings indicates that these 2 little guys have a significant status within the sect. This is a token from the Martial Soul Hall. Should we register now? No need, Crown. I will personally register your situation, so I won't disturb your journey to the Star Forest. The guy guarding here is still so respectful, bending down and making a gesture of invitation. But if this guy can meet Chen Xian, it proves that he has met him. A person who has seen the title Douluo is actually guarding a small gate here. But it's normal to think about it. The Dura world is just a little bit titled Dura, and almost all Long Dim Sum can understand it. The three of them swaggered into the starry forest, which was less than a kilometer away from the entrance. As for the remaining road, they had to walk on their own. The starry forest, when viewed from afar, is almost entirely a 100-meter-tall giant tree. A simple possibility doesn't seem like much. But like this, when directly connected together, one can achieve the feeling of blocking out the sky and the sun. The light in the forest is not very bright, and even due to the problem of blocking the light, some areas are completely invisible. Xiaotian, Rongrong, what kind of first soul rings do you two want? Qinshin walked ahead and asked as she walked. The auxiliary martial soul, Grandpa Sword, should be clearer. I don't have much research on this, you can also ask my brother what he wants. Ning Rongrong spoke with a milky voice. I want a martial soul with a powerful attack. Or one with a stronger healing power. Ning Xiaotian directly said what he wanted. After all, the martial soul of the Seven Treasures Glass Pagoda is not economical and can assist teammates, but also assist oneself. Either the attack is powerful, or a quick cure can be achieved, and now he can accept it in any aspect. Anyway, this martial soul is too weak for oneself. How much can a martial soul who always wants to assist others achieve? Ning Xiaotian prefers 1.1 hard work, which is the true nature of a man. As for standing behind this has never been the result he wanted. After hearing Ning Xiaotian's request, Qinshin smiled helplessly. He knew that this little guy had no fondness for this martial soul at all. The attitude exhibited by Ning Xiaotian since awakening his martial soul has already explained everything. Nowadays, the maximum lifespan of the first martial soul is 423 years, so next we only need to find the soul beast you want on the outskirts of the star forest. Qinshin touched her beard and said with a slight smile on her face. Really just searching for a soul beast that has been around for hundreds of years, there is no need to walk towards the interior of the starry forest. As for Ning Xiaotian, he never mind how old his first soul ring is. Anyway, I didn't expect this thing to make me so powerful. Just make something similar. Those who claim to be able to break through their limits easily are pure nonsense. Next, we will officially enter the star forest. You must follow me closely. This place is full of danger, don't run around. At the moment Chen Xian stepped into the starry forest, his expression became slightly serious. Although I am confident that I have enough ability to protect the safety of two people, sometimes things are not as absolute as I imagine. Ning Xiaotian didn't have much to do, he closely followed the footsteps of Sword Douluo. As soon as you enter the forest, the environment here is really completely different from the outside. A 100-year-old fast-patterned wolf. It can assist teammates in improving their speed. No way. Ning Rongrong immediately shouted. 10 minutes later, the 230-year-old water Kuei ox is incredibly powerful. This is fine, it's him. Ning Xiaotian directly made up his mind for Ning Rongrong. It has only been an hour since entering the star forest, and now the first thing to choose is for Ning Rongrong. 230 years is relatively sufficient. The premise of not being filled with danger and providing powerful assistance is already sufficient for Ning Rongrong. Brother, do you really want this? Ning Rongrong asked. The first soul skill auxiliary power is probably the most suitable choice for teammates. Ning Xiaotian said. Xiaotian was right this time. Most of the first souls of the Seven Treasures Glass Pagoda choose power as an auxiliary skill. Even your father's first soul skill is like this. Chen Xian reminded. Ah. Ning Rongrong was a bit reluctant, but looking at their eyes, it seemed as if he was also helpless. Looking at the big and ugly water Kuei ox with a pointed horn on its head, it could only nod helplessly in the end. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Sacrificing Soul Rings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Sacrificing Soul Rings. This kind of thing will soon come to an end. For the soul beast, which has been in existence for over 200 years, it will be destroyed with just a flick of a finger for the dust heart of Douluo. So it didn't require much effort in itself. However, the final blow must still be completed by Ning Rongrong himself. Otherwise, the soul ring cannot be absorbed by him. Although I don't know exactly what the principle is, this approach has always been proven. The soul ring, which has been around for over 200 years, although not enough to harm Ning Rongrong, is not too forced. However, the absorption of soul rings takes at least nearly half an hour. During this period, Qinshin must ensure the safety of Ning Rongrong, even to the extent of staying steadfast. At that moment, Xiaotian completely ignored Ning Xiaotian. Although still within his own field of vision, Ning Xiaotian kept his back to Qinshin. In such a place, he really wants to feel it better. For over a decade, soul beasts have been everywhere here, mostly lacking in attack ability. Sword Douluo Qinshin is relatively confident about this. After all, as long as soul beasts that have been here for over 100 years come, they can be detected as tidal Douluo at the first time. Over a decade of curly-tailed mice. Ning Xiaotian looked at the mouse, which was almost as big as a cat, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Although these guys have only been around for over a decade, they also have their own abilities. Not being aggressive doesn't mean you won't attack. Ning Xiaotian turned his head and glanced at Qinshin, making sure that the other person's attention was all focused on his sister. With a slight smile on his face, he turned his head and instantly became cold. Sangoyu's Sharingan was immediately revealed in that moment. Illusion manipulation. Ning Xiaotian softly shouted out, "This is the ability of Sangoyu to write will eyes." When the Sharingan reaches a level of insight, it possesses the ability to slow down the attacks of its opponents. When its body has enough reaction speed, it is already an incredibly powerful existence. Ergoyu's Sharingan has the ability to replicate the opponent's movements. As for Sangoyu's Sharingan, his greatest ability is illusion. Ning Xiaotian originally intended to conduct an experiment on this curly-tailed mouse that has been around for over a decade. Almost all of these soul beasts under 10,000 years have no intelligence. Only soul beasts that have been around for over 10,000 years will have their own intelligence. So, 10,000 years of time is a natural pit for soul beasts. Activate illusion. The curly-tailed mouse on the ground was just about to leave, but the next moment it suddenly turned around and slowly arrived at Ning Xiaotian's feet. "Sacrifice your soul ring to me." Ning Xiaotian used his writing will eye to manipulate the rolling tail mouse and said. Immediately afterwards, a white soul ring emerged from the body of the mouse. However, Ning Xiaotian didn't want to use this soul ring that has been around for over a decade. At that time, this thing will be considered garbage in the real garbage. With a casual tap, the white soul ring was shattered directly, and the curly-tailed mouse lay straight on the ground motionless at the moment when the soul ring disappeared. Surprisingly, it's really possible. Ning Xiaotian's heart instantly became excited. But the distant Qinshin frowned and looked at Ning Xiaotian here. Because from Ning Xiaotian, he can truly feel a sinister aura, and this aura is very terrifying. But now I can't leave here, and I can only watch that little guy playing around on his own. How can we get rid of it and give it a try? Ning Xiaotian sat under the big tree, staring at Qinshin, still thinking about how to leave himself and go out alone for action. With a sigh, Ning Xiaotian closed his eyes and entered his spiritual space in the next second. He thought it was nothing, but when he saw the allocation value column, a 1 appeared in the area that had already been reset to 0. This kind of thing really surprised him. At the same time, I couldn't help but suspect that this thing itself needs to brush experience points. But the real way seems to need to be tried again. There aren't many things around, but soul beasts are really a bunch of them. Even if it's not 100 years, this pile of 10 years can still be used for him to practice his skills. Qinshin couldn't understand why Ning Xiaotian was going crazy again. At this moment, he was jumping and jumping in front of him. Anyway, he could never have known that after solving another soul beast that had been around for over a decade, Ning Xiaotian immediately entered the spiritual space to check the system panel. Although there was not a 2 as expected, the grid-like thing in the upper right corner of the system, similar to charging, unexpectedly walked forward into a grid. Now it can be confirmed that when something like this charging case fills 10 grids, its assignable value will increase by 1. This is the significant discovery. As for the soul beasts that can be hunted today, Ning Xiaotian can completely show that he doesn't care at all. Half an hour later, Ning Rongrong finally completed the absorption of his first soul ring. The little girl stood up, her face full of energy and without any discomfort. Yes, it's just a soul beast that has been around for over 200 years, and it really doesn't have much impact on the body. Amazing, Rongrong. What is the first soul skill? Ning Xiaotian had been standing here before Ning Rongrong had just finished absorbing the soul ring. So when Ning Rongrong finished absorbing it and looked at the other person's appearance, he couldn't help but ask curiously. Grandpa Sword, brother, my first soul skill can increase power by 30%. Ning Rongrong laughed and said, then looked at his brother with a sour expression on his face, and there are still many people. That's amazing. Ning Xiaotian gave a moderate compliment and said. This is quite good. Chen Xian couldn't help but praise him. Xiaotian, what kind of soul beast are you planning to find? Grandpa Jian, I don't seem to be in a hurry yet, but let's stick to what I said before. Ning Xiaotian smiled, but also said somewhat seriously. Agile or healing? Qinxin touched her beard and began to mutter to herself, lost in thought. Grandpa Jian, let's do it this way. Since everyone has already come out, I want to take this opportunity to experience it, so next, I want to go hunting soul beasts on my own. As for Grandpa Jian, take Rongrong with you from afar. In case I have any problems, come over and help me. Ning Xiaotian suggested. This is only in a consultative tone, and if the other party does not agree, there is no way at all. Are you sure? Qinxin asked in confusion. He could feel that there was definitely a secret in Ning Xiaotian's body, and although curious, he did not choose to pursue it. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. First Solo Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 First Solo Battle. Faced with Chen Xian's question, Ning Xiaotian smiled slightly and said, Grandpa Jian, I just want to give it a try. I also have some secrets that I haven't told, but I don't know if it's the same as what I thought. If that's the case, I will definitely tell you. Okay. Qinxin smiled and nodded. In Ning Xiaotian's eyes, Chen Xian is an absolutely trustworthy person, and he also has absolute loyalty to the Seven Treasures Drifting Sect. Say it again. I have many plans ahead and will definitely use this sword Douluo, which is known as the strongest attack. A secret may be kept for 1 or 2 years, but it is absolutely impossible to keep it for a longer period of time. Once discovered by the other party, there will definitely be a barrier between them. Brother. Are you really going to hunt soul beasts yourself? Ning Rongrong asked with some concern. It's okay. Ning Xiaotian walked over to Ning Rongrong's side, gently rubbed his head, and then looked up at Chen Xian. Ready, let's start, Grandpa Sword. Let me take a look, your secret is ready. Qinxin smiled contentedly. The three of them set off again, but this time Ning Xiaotian was at the forefront. Qinxin and Ning Rongrong followed at a distance of 200 meters, trying their best not to disturb Ning Xiaotian. Sword Douluo Qinxin has been observing Ning Xiaotian's situation all along, and when absolutely necessary, he will not choose to take action. 150-year-old Fong Pig. This guy is extremely aggressive, but anything within his field of vision that can be eaten will charge up and attack. Ning Xiaotian is no exception. When I first saw it, this 4-legged, 1-meter-tall guy rushed towards him in an instant. Illusion control. Sangoyu's Sharingan instantly erupted, replacing chakra with soul power, and began to attack this 150-year-old guy in an instant. Difficulty. Ning Xiaotian suddenly felt that it was still a bit difficult to manipulate such a big guy just by relying on this method. But it's not without any use, at least it made the big guy who suddenly ran over stop there immediately. Ning Xiaotian didn't choose to attack. He wanted to see how long fantasy speed could last to control this big guy. 15 seconds. Speaking, Ning Xiaotian suddenly jumped. Shave. The six forms ability, although just beginner, has definitely surpassed ordinary people in terms of speed. Grandpa Jian, is brother okay? In the distance, two people are watching this scene. Ning Rongrong clenched his small fist with some concern and asked Xiaotian in fear. Let's take a look and talk. Qianxin also has the same concern. Although Ning Xiaotian has an innate soul power of level 20, he is not an attacking type, but an auxiliary ability. In addition, he still needs to face the rough and fleshy Fong Fong pig. A transparent small sword was always hovering in the palm of his hand, and Xiaotian was watching closely. If Ning Xiaotian couldn't defeat him, he could also directly kill that big guy in the first place. The biggest drawback of pig-like beasts is that they may have problems turning during high-speed running. Ning Xiaotian was thinking while moving. This kind of big guy has extremely strong attack ability, and more importantly, his skin is rough and his flesh is thick, while also having extremely strong defense. However, to deal with such a guy, Ning Xiaotian can definitely say that it doesn't require too much effort. Quickly move, then suddenly rush to the side of the Fong Fong pig, while the other party does not react, concentrate all their strength on their legs. Bang! A loud bang. Ning Xiaotian kicked the Fangya pig hard on the neck. With the output of its powerful power, this soul beast flew straight up and crashed into a distant tree. After seeing the other person land and want to get up, Ning Xiaotian once again whispered, "Shave." Bang! 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 Attacking in the same place more than 10 times in a row, the powerful force even hammered the Fong Fong pig underground. Even within a 2-meter radius, a deep pit has already emerged. After finishing work, jumped out of a distance of 5 or 6 meters, then clapped his hands. But at that moment, a sword flash flew from afar in an instant. Bang! The wild boar has fallen. But he collapsed behind himself. Very good. However, it's just inexperienced. This soul beast is obviously pretending to be dead, but being able to achieve this level is already quite good. Qianxin walked over with Ning Rongrong and looked at the Fong Fong pig lying on the ground, giving a satisfied review of the battle. A 6-year-old child, I know the ability of this soul beast, and it is really possible to kill this century-old soul beast with my own strength. For those combat-oriented soul masters, it may take a considerable amount of effort to kill the 150-year-old Fong Fong pig at level 20. Not to mention for an auxiliary soul master, even if they reach the level of Soul King, it may not be realistic to achieve solo killing. Learned. Ning Xiaotian lowered his head and bowed, as he had not considered this issue before. I guess if it weren't for Xiaotian's intervention, I wouldn't have had to lie in bed for a while. Hee. You have done very well, even surpassing Grandpa Jian's understanding of an auxiliary soul master. Qianxin smiled and said, but what she said this time was not false. Yeah, brother, you're really amazing. Ning Rongrong was also surprised and said. Choose 2 soul rings at once, as Ning Xiaotian mentioned before, and he doesn't want to directly come up with something that will last for thousands of years. As long as it's not a brain bubble, who would joke about their own life if it's okay. After practicing for a day, with the help of Sword Douluo Qianxin, the first soul ring was chosen as the 360-year rootless bamboo, which is mainly used for main defense. The second soul ring is chosen from the ghost wolf of 780 years old, which has a strong main speed and can be considered an extremely strong presence. Ning Xiaotian never expected that when he checked the system panel again, the assignable value would appear as 5, which means that today alone, he already has 5 more attribute assignment values. However, after the previous battles, he also saw that the allocation value can indeed be increased through battles, and it is still the type with a relatively fast increase speed. Absorbed 2 soul rings to increase 3 points, but in just one battle, I have already gained 2 additional points. However, the distribution value brought by soul rings is only a sign of a sudden increase in soul power. So, the allocation value brought by absorbing soul rings to oneself is not as much as imagined. But in battle without any hesitation, after the second soul ring was absorbed, Ning Xiaotian directly allocated all 3 points brought by the soul ring to add to the soul power. This means that at the age of only 6, Ning Xiaotian is now a level 22 second ring soul master. It cannot be said to be unique, it can only be said to be very rare. One day had already ended all their journeys, and this time they were only searching for soul rings on the outskirts of the Star Forest. I'm afraid it's still far from the central area. End of this chapter.